Sri Gurubhyo Namaha students. Welcome back to Online Teaching Academy, Ekalaiva. Yesterday we started the lesson from history, the rise of nationalism. Let's have a quick recap of what we have learned yesterday. So Frederick Sori's utopian vision, and we had seen a picture and interpreted about it. And what is a modern state and a nation state? And in this map of Europe in 1815, we understood that these states are countries but not nations. And they are in the process of becoming nation states. And this picture interpretation gave a clear message that many of the states in Europe wanted to become nation state. And we also understood the meaning of a modern state and a nation state. Today we are going to see the next chapter. So the learning objectives of this chapter the French Revolution and the idea of the nation, Civil Code of 1804, the making of nationalism in Europe, what did liberalism stand for, how liberalism became the main concern, and how liberalism fused with French Revolution. This is what we are going to see today. With the French Revolution, a clear message came that led to the transfer of sovereignty from the monarchy to a body of French citizens. So immediately after the French Revolution, lots of philosophers spread the ideas of liberalism that sent a message to the people to think about their rights and to abolish the system of monarchy. And ultimately, the power should be passed on to the people. These ideas came, and the credit went to the philosophers, French philosophers like Voltaire, Rousseau, Montesquieu, all these people. So when they spread the ideas, French revolutionaries spread the ideas in their country, that is in France, and they did not stop with France and took these ideas to the neighboring countries. And every country wanted to become a nation state. They wanted to help for that. The French revolutionaries wanted all the countries in Europe to become nations. So what measures and practices they have adopted to spread nationalism? We are going to see this chapter. So the first clear expression of nationalism came with French Revolution in 1789. That led to transfer of sovereignty from the monarchy to a body of French citizens. So immediately after French Revolution, monarchy system has been abolished and the power is coming to the French citizens, to the people. Measures and practices taken by French revolutionaries to create a sense of collective identity amongst the French people, where la patrie, that means the fatherland, les citoyens, that means the citizen. These two terms emphasized the notion of a united community enjoying equal rights under a constitution. The second one, they created a new French tricolor flag. Earlier, they had the flag, that is, the royal standard flag was there, that was replaced by a new French tricolor flag. The Estates General. It was elected by the body of active citizens and it was renamed as National Assembly. So these steps were taken and not only with this, we have some more ideas that was spread by the French Revolution. Not only with this, first thing, they have created a flag. And the steps have been taken to pass on the power to the active citizens. So let's see the other ideas that have been taken by the French Revolution. New hymns were composed and oaths were taken and martins were commemorated. Everything, oaths taken, martins commemorated, new hymns, everything in the name of nation. A centralized administrative system that was put in place and it formulated uniform laws for all the citizens within its territory. And internal custom duties and dues were abolished. The best part is uniform system of weights and measures were adopted. And regional dialects, lot of dialects, local dialects were there that was discouraged and French was spoken as common language of the nation. And when they took these measures and practices, it sent a message to the people that all these practices have to be followed by the people in the name of the nation and to spread the nationalism. It spread nationalism. It made the people to feel that it's my country, my flag, my country's flag, my nation's flag, and French is my language. And administrative system, uniform measures and weights, all these things happened to make that territory as one nation. So when we look into this, the French Revolution and the idea of the nation. So we have to see why the French Revolution sent the idea of the nation. The revolutionaries declared that it was the mission and destiny of the French nation to liberate the peoples of Europe from despotism, that is from the monarchy system, which is autocratic, and to help other peoples of Europe, other country peoples of Europe to become nations. And when they did all these things in the name of the nation, the news and events of France reached the different cities of Europe. Students and educated middle classes began setting up Jacobin clubs. Jacobin clubs, you read last year in the 9th standard. Lot of revolutionaries have happened during the period of Jacobin clubs. And you can see that the middle class, educated middle class, their role was very, very important in spreading the message of nationalism and creating the country France into a nation state. The activities and campaigns prepared the way for the French armies, which moved into Holland, the neighboring country, Holland, Belgium, Switzerland, and Italy, and carried the idea of nationalism abroad to the neighboring countries. And when they carried, the neighboring countries accepted these reforms. And they thought that these reforms, these ideas will help their country to become nations. So, Civil Code of 1804. Now, Napoleon had a lot of territories under him, under his control. He introduced many reforms that he had already introduced in France to the other neighboring countries. Through a return to monarchy, Napoleon had no doubt destroyed the democracy in France. The democracy that was enjoyed by the French people from 1789 to 1799. During the French Revolution, immediately after the French Revolution, all these things were destroyed by Napoleon. Of course, he had introduced a lot of reforms in the administrative system, but by declaring himself as an emperor for France, he had destroyed democracy. Once again, he had taken back to the monarchy system. So, for about 20 years, the people of France were enjoying freedom. The power was with the people. Now, Civil Code of 1804, introduced by Napoleon, gave a lot of reforms. He abolished the privileges based on birth, the system that was prevailing in Europe, nobility, clergy, and commoners. So the first two estates were free from everything, and the third estate, that is the commoners, have to pay all the taxes because they were born in the third estate. That was abolished by Napoleon. Everybody was considered equal before law. And he abolished the feudal system, which freed the peasants from serfdom and manorial dues. So the peasants have to work for the landlords without any payment. So all these things were abolished by Napoleon, which was one of the important steps he had taken. Right to property. It secured, Civil Code of 1804 secured the right to property. Guild restrictions were removed in the towns. You read in the lesson, The Age of Industrialization, about the trade guilds and the urban crafts, where this association was controlling the entry of the new people into the guild. These restrictions were removed by Napoleon. Transport and communication systems were improved. So peasants, artisans, workers, and new businessmen enjoyed newfound freedom. Particularly, the businessmen and small-scale producer of goods, they realized that uniform laws, standardized weights and measures, and a common national currency was all that they needed. So that was introduced by Napoleon. So this facility allowed them to move freely, and exchange of goods and capital from one region to another was possible due to this. So these reforms introduced by Napoleon had lots of advantages. Of course, it had its own disadvantages. When the French armies went into Milan, Warsaw, Mainz, to these neighboring states, they were welcomed as harbingers of liberty, that is, saviors of liberty. But very soon, the people of those regions understood that the activities and the words told by them in the name of liberty did not go hand in hand. In the name of liberty, it did not go hand in hand. So they started to have a feeling of hostility towards these French armies. So there were some disadvantages of Civil Code of 1804. So initially in many places such as Holland, Milan, Warsaw, Brussels, French armies were welcomed as harbingers of liberty. But the initial enthusiasm soon turned into hostility. They started to feel that they were not happy with the activities of these French armies. And the new arrangements did not go hand in hand with the political freedom. They talked about freedom, but the arrangement and the activities they showed was not as with the political freedom. So it had its disadvantages. One was increased taxation. A lot of tax were levied. Forced conscription into French armies. People were forced to join the French armies. It is to conquer the rest of Europe. For that purpose, people were forced to join the army, French army. Censorship. So, censorship, whatever they spread news, whatever they publish, whatever they print, that was censored by the army, French army, the revolutionary. So all these, the three disadvantages outweigh the administrative reforms introduced by Napoleon. Civil Code of 1804, or popularly known as Napoleonic Code of 1804. So let's understand the mid-18th century Europe, how it was. There were no nation states because Europeans never saw themselves sharing a common identity or culture. They spoke different languages and belonged to different ethnic groups. You may recall the lesson from civics. The Belgium, how it had different ethnicities in power sharing lesson. Different ethnic groups, how they have started out the issue with different ethnicities. So it was quite common in Europe to have people of different ethnic groups in one country. For example, the Habsburg Empire of Austria and Hungary. It had the three dominant groups, that is French, Italian, and German-speaking people. Now, these people, these territories were divided into kingdoms, duchies, and cantons, whose rulers had their autonomous territories. And Eastern and Central Europe were under autocratic monarchies within the territories where diverse people lived. They did not see themselves as sharing a collective identity or a common culture, as we have seen here. So in Austria-Hungary, so the Alpine regions, the Tyrol, Austria, Sudetenland, Bohemia, these are the German-speaking territories. And Lombardy and Venetia, Italian-speaking territories. And French was commonly spoken in Europe, so it was quite common. Apart from that, local languages were there, Magyar was there, variety of local dialects were there, and in Galicia, the aristocracy spoke Polish language. So when they had lot of differences, lots and lots of differences, ethnically different, language was different, territory was different. This sort of diversity did not promote a unity among the people. It was not only in Austria-Hungary, but this was the case everywhere in Europe. So they did not see themselves belong to one nation. Such differences did not promote a sense of political unity, and the only tie that was binding these diverse groups was a common allegiance to the emperor. Common allegiance means irrespective of the emperor. Take the example of Austria-Hungary. Definitely Austrian ruler only should rule them. But that was, we can see that different dominant groups were there. And never ever they thought they are in a different country and they are among the other country people, other dominant groups. So what did that make them to get to be there in that country? The common allegiance, 3 or 4 different languages, 4 or 5 different ethnic groups. So the common allegiance, that is the loyalty to the ruler, that was the only thing that was binding the diverse groups of the peoples of Europe. So this was a situation in mid-18th century Europe. So apart from that, 2 classes were dominating in Europe. One was aristocracy, another one was peasantry. So just now we saw how politically they were fragmented. Now we are going to see the 2 classes. They were only dominant in Europe. Two classes of Europe in mid-18th century. The first one is aristocracy. Socially and politically, this class, that is aristocracy, was the dominant class on the continent, European continent. So the members of this class were united by a common way of life that cut across regional divisions. Throughout Europe, their lifestyle was same. And they owned estates in the countryside. So they are known as the landowning class. They had estates in the countryside and they had houses in the town side. They spoke French for diplomacy to show that they belonged to the high class. They spoke French. And their families were connected through marriages. So this powerful aristocracy, however, was numerically very, very small. Numerically very, very small. So the majority of the population was made up of peasantry. So in the Western Europe, the bulk of the land was formed by tenants and small owners. small landowners. While in Eastern and Central Europe, the pattern of land holding was characterized by vast estates, which were cultivated by serfdom. The serfdom was abolished by Napoleon that we have seen just now. So apart from these, there was one more class coming up, that was the working class, commercial class. Because industrialization was quite popular at the time it started. So the working class was also seen, particularly the educated middle class. They were very, very active in spreading the ideas of nation and nationalism. Their role was very, very prominent. So the growth of trade and industrial production facilitated the growth of towns and rise of commercial class traders. So the educated liberal middle class emerged and popularized nationalism and stood for the abolition of aristocracy. So entirely they wanted to abolish aristocracy. And last year it learnt about liberals, conservatives, and rationalists. So liberal ideas were spread by the educated middle class. So what is liberalism? Who are liberals? Liberals are the people who came with new ideas and wanted to take their country to the next level. They don't want to follow the old ideas and old systems, old hierarchy, nobility, clergy, commoners. They wanted to abolish the system and they wanted the power to be with the people. This idea was propagated by the French philosophers and this was spread by the educated middle class. So let's check what is liberalism. What are liberal ideas? So liberalism means individual freedom. Every individual wanted freedom. Everybody should be treated equally before the law. Government by consent. That is, the representative government, they wanted to emphasize on that. Freedom of markets. Movement of goods and capital to move freely in the market. That is what they expected. Abolition of state-imposed restrictions on the movement of goods and capital. These are the expectations of liberal nationalists. So liberalism became the main concern in Europe. Why did it become the main concern? These are the reasons. Universal adult suffrage was not granted by the Napoleonic Court. Only for a brief time, under the Jacobins, all the adult males enjoyed the suffrage, voting right. Otherwise, in Europe, men without property and women were denied the right to vote. Never ever the men without property and women got the right to vote. Only the propertied men had the right to vote. So this was one of the reasons for promoting liberalism. And women were made subject to the authority of men. This was another reason. So markets were not free as the countless small principalities of 39 states had their own laws which posed problems for the free movement of goods. this free movement of goods posed a problem. How it was a problem, how they overcome the problem, we are going to see with an example in the forthcoming pages. There were no standard weights and measures and no fixed rates of custom duties which affected the trade. This was the main concern for the traders. Standard weights and measures were not there and no fixed rates of custom duties. From the economic point of view, from the economic sphere, they wanted this state-imposed restrictions to be removed. And particularly, this was the strong demand of the emerging middle classes. How it affected the free movement of goods and capital, we are going to see shortly with an example. So liberalism fused with French Revolution. So when liberal ideas with French Revolution ideas, they got mixed, fused, and it gave new ideas together. So the ideas were end of autocracy and clerical privileges. So autocracy, that is monarchy system, should be abolished and the nobility and clergy should not have any privileges. Second one, introduction of a constitution and representative government. This is what government by consent. So the constitution and the representative government through parliament, this is what they wanted. Inviolability of private property, security of private property. Removal of trade restrictions. The trade restriction should be removed. And finally, the freedom of markets, that is to move, freedom of markets and the abolition of state-imposed restrictions on the movement of goods and capital. That is what they insisted. So, a customs union, Zollverein, was formed in the year 1834 at the initiative of Prussia. It abolished tariff barriers and reduced the number of currencies to 2 from 30. So why this customs union was formed? So we saw that countless small principalities, a confederation of 39 states, had their own laws, their own currencies, their own measurements. So a person in the mid-18th century had to travel from Hamburg to Nuremberg. He has to cross 11 custom barriers and he has to have different currencies. So every custom barrier when he has to cross, he should have that confederation's currency and measurement was also different. For example, if you have 1 meter of cloth, the 1 meter of cloth should be same in every territory. Throughout India, 1 meter of cloth is same. It never comes down or it never goes up. It's not 90 centimeter or 110 centimeter. But in the mid-18th century, the measurement was also different. And 11 custom barriers. Whenever he has to cross a custom barrier, he has to give a 5% custom duty to get into that territory, to cross the custom barrier. So, measurement, 5% custom duty, and currency. Three difficulties the traders have. Calculating the measurement when he trade with somebody else in that territory. Calculation was difficult. Measurement was also different. Currencies, he has to have 30 currencies. So these disadvantages they have. So all these things have been cleared by introducing a customs union at the initiative of Prussia, which is known as Zollverein. So through this customs union, the 30 currencies have come down to 2 currencies. 11 custom barriers have been reduced. And freedom of movement of capital and goods was possible. This liberalism, this economic liberalism was very important for the people, for Europe, for the peoples of Europe. So liberalism, social liberalism, we have seen equality before the law, abolition of privileges based on birth, socially, politically, voting rights they wanted, and government by consent. All these things: political liberalism, social liberalism, economic liberalism. Through these ideas, the nationalism started to spread in France as well as the neighboring countries. Every country started to have a feeling that it is the nation. So with this, you would have got the idea of liberalism, how the ideas spread across France and other countries. So let's see in the next session. Thank you, children.